want to know what actually is a catch? How about player ejections with the Odell Beckham controversy? Good morning. It is Friday, March 11th. I'm Jason. This is the Voice of the Spartan, broadcasting from Cheshire, Connecticut. On today's episode, we will discuss NFL rules, and we'll also talk to NFL referee Ed Hochuli for his 2 cents on the rules that started all of this clamor. This season, like every year, football had its share of controversy. Arguably the most confusing bit of the game this year was what was and was not a catch. This catch rule and clarity started with the Calvin Johnson catch, where the Detroit Lions' Johnson appeared to catch the ball in the end zone. However, this was later ruled not a catch because it went to the ground before he had control. The catch rule is under fire again for plays like the Dez Bryant play in 2015 playoffs. It looked like he secured the ball, but in reality, he had no control of the ball. Now, every week there seems to be a catch that is or is not actually a catch. Catches were not the only thing that caused controversy this year, however. During a Week 15 game between the Giants and the Panthers, Giants receiver Odell Beckham Jr. and Panthers cornerback Josh Norman were fighting all game. During the game, referee Terry McAuley did not take any actions other than penalizing the players. He did not eject them, which caused controversy. As a result, there was talk of a system that could cause a player to be ejected after a certain number of personal foul penalties. Like, for example, 3 penalties would cause an ejection. However, the question still remains, when should a player be ejected? We'll hear from NFL official Ed Hochuli for his opinion on this later. Intentional grounding and defensive pass interference are penalties that can cause controversy as well. According to many angry football fans and some professional sportscasters, intentional grounding is called too little and pass interference too often. Later on in the show, we'll hear when these penalties are called and why the fans are wrong. Finally, with the addition of technology, one watching at home can get every camera angle and get them at every speed possible, it seems. While this benefits the home experience, does it make the job easier for those who call the games? Does making the game go slower create more accurate calls and all of this controversy? To help clarify some of this controversy, I got the chance to speak with NFL official Ed Hochuli for his opinion on these issues. So to start off, how long have you been an NFL official, and what made you decide to become one?
I just finished my 26th year as an NFL official, and what made me decide to become one? I played football through high school and college, and when I graduated from college, one of my high school coaches suggested that I would enjoy officiating as a way to stay in touch with a game that I had played at that point my whole life. And so I did, and I started doing youth football and really enjoyed it. And so I stuck with it, and slowly over the years, the way the officiating world works is you can work your way up through high school into small college and major college, and then you're fortunate enough to the NFL. And that's what happened to me.
What's the process of becoming an NFL official?
Well, you've got to be working major college. So you have to have done the steps to get you into major college. Then you would either apply to the NFL or sometimes the NFL will contact some college officials because the NFL scouts all the major college conferences. So they've got a list, a working list on all 9 officials that they're interested in that they think might have a future. And once you get the attention of the NFL, if they are interested, for example, if you applied, if they would watch you and if they think that you're the caliber that they're looking for, then the current process, and this isn't what it was when I was getting into the NFL, but the current process is they then have a program called ADP, Advanced Developmental Program. And they usually keep about 20 officials or so on their ADP list, and they work with those guys. They attend some of our preseason games, and we work with those officials as well to start getting them trained. And they might be on the ADP list for 2 or 3 or 4 years, and there's no NFL. The NFL hires the ADP list.
A lot of controversy this year among fans and for the league was about what constitutes a catch. So what does the NFL rulebook say about what a catch is?
It's that's a hard answer to give without showing examples, video examples. We spend tremendous amount of time watching video every week, discussing those sorts of things. And I know there's a lot of controversy about what to catch, but amongst the officials, we know what a catch is. It actually is very clear to us. And so when we watch plays, on the field it's hard in full action sometimes, but if you show any NFL official a close one, we would agree 95% of the time. There's some really close ones, and obviously some people, but we would agree almost always what's catch. The answer to your question is, it depends on, first of all, whether the receiver completes the catch before he starts going to the ground or after he starts going to the ground. If he becomes a runner before he has contact, that contact makes him go to the ground, then when he hits the ground, he has completed the catch, and it would be down by contact. If he has not completed the catch before he is hit, and that's the contact, the hit, that makes him start to go to the ground, then if he loses the ball when he hits the ground, it's an incomplete pass. So those are the two possibilities. But you notice in both of those, I said the question was whether he becomes a runner before he starts to go to the ground. So then we have to say that what's the definition of becoming a runner? And that is having complete control of the football, having both feet put down or another body part other than the hand. And that could be an elbow or a knee or shoulder, like that. Having both feet down. So it's almost, and there's no set amount of time, but if the ball comes loose the moment the second foot comes down, it's an incomplete pass. But if he's taken a third step, for example, or there's any appreciable amount of time after the second foot comes down, then he is a runner. And so now if the ball comes out when he hits the ground, he would have completed the catch. It would be down by contact. But the question always comes up because people talk about, well, he's stretching, he's reaching out with the football, he's doing another act, or he's taking a third step. But if all of that happens in the process of him going to the ground, he didn't become a runner before he started going to the ground. That's the key element that most people miss in those controversial plays that we see from week to week.
That clears up a lot of confusion. Thanks. So,
but I know it's still a confusing answer, and I understand, and that's why I said at the beginning, it's one of those things that if I had video and I was showing you with some video examples, it would be a whole lot easier for you or your listeners to understand than a verbal explanation.
Okay. Another penalty that is somewhat controversial is intentional grounding. And it was the 19th most called penalty in football this season, but a lot of people think it should have been called more. So what constitutes intentional grounding?
Okay, and let me lead this off by saying that part of the philosophy is that we want the quarterback to be able, as much as possible, in a legal fashion, to get rid of the football so he doesn't get tapped. So obviously the quarterbacks are very important to the game, and we want to try to avoid injuries to quarterbacks. So that's the reason that there is some leeway in throwing the football away. If the quarterback is still in the pocket is from tackle to tackle. If the quarterback is still in the pocket, he has to throw the ball into an area where there is an eligible receiver, an eligible offensive receiver. If he is out of the pocket, he can throw the ball into an area where there is no eligible receiver as long as the ball lands beyond the line of scrimmage. So when he's out of the pocket, it's really pretty easy. He's just got to get the ball past the line of scrimmage. If he's in the pocket, now he's got to get it into an area where there is an eligible receiver. And we do not consider receiver may have run the wrong route. The quarterback throws the ball, and maybe he thought that his receiver was going to be in that area, but the receiver cut the route off, and it ends when the ball lands nobody there. That's intentional ground. The other element, whether he's inside the pocket or out of the pocket, is that the quarterback has to be under pressure. So if a quarterback is just throwing the ball away because he's trying to just stop the clock, or he's just given up because he's not going to have anybody open, that's not intentional.
Okay. Another penalty that's being called more and more is defensive pass interference, but a lot of people at home don't really see why the penalty is called so much. So what, in your mind, triggers pass interference?
Well, I think that the first thing that standpoint is whether it's against their team or for their team. Because people yell that something was pass interference when we don't call it.
Of course.
If it was the team that was affected. So that's a big influence in everybody's mind. Pass interference is the real key is whether it's offense or defense, is the receiver or the defender playing the ball, or is he playing the man? The amount of contact is fairly insignificant if I am trying to catch the football or to knock the football down. But if my goal is to prevent the other person from catching the pass, then any contact, any significant contact, other than incidental, any significant contact that I make against him would be pass interference. So one of the major things we look for is the receiver. The rule is the same for both of them. Is the player looking back at the football, or is he looking at the opponent? If he's looking at the opponent, he better not make anything other than incidental contact with him, or it's going to be a foul. If he's looking back at the football, that contact is not going to be a foul unless he is actually playing through the opponent. So even if I'm trying to catch the football, if I'm coming back and the opponent's between me and the football, and I go right through his back, that's a foul. I can't play through the opponent. But other than that, the contact is incidental if I am indeed trying to make a play in football rather than playing against the opponent.
There are times in a season when a player's conduct on the field might be seen as excessive, like, for example, Odell Beckham and Josh Norman, and some think that maybe those players should be ejected. So what types of conduct would lead to a player being ejected?
Okay, without commenting on, you mentioned a couple of players, and I'm not commenting on the players or any particular plays that they may have been involved in, because I know that there were some controversial issues. There always are involving players. But the things that get players ejected, as the rule currently stands, and I know that there may be some discussion about this in the offseason, but as it currently stands, if you kick, if you slug at an opponent, if you spit at an opponent, those are the things that will get you ejected. If you swing and miss, it's still going to get you ejected. Now, we see a lot of times a player will push with an open hand. You may hit the guy in the chest or even the helmet. That's going to be a foul, but that's not going to get you ejected.
Okay.
You know, there could be a level where somebody swings a forearm, clotheslines a defender or an opponent in the helmet, and it's really an egregious, very aggressive, intentional act. That could get you ejected. So it takes that sort of action to get somebody ejected.
And finally, with all the new technology used on the football field in terms of camera and instant replay, do you think that it makes your job as an official easier or harder?
It doesn't affect how hard my job is. It affects accuracy. Our goal is to be correct. We like instant replay because it fixes mistakes. And so anytime we can fix a mistake, we want to fix the mistake. But when we're officiating the game, we can't think about that. We can never officiate with the thought in mind that instant replay is going to look at this. If you start doing that, you start making mistakes and you become indecisive. But instant replay has done a very good job in my opinion, in the NFL in making it a better officiated game, because things happen so fast out there that sometimes we're going to be wrong. And when we can fix it, we like the fact that replay fixes mistakes.
Once again, a big thanks to Ed Hochuli for his time. It turns out that really nobody knows what a catch is. Sure, we can all tell what definitely is a catch, and we can tell when the pass goes incomplete. But instead of the game being black and white with completion and incompletion, it's more of a color gradient, where it has a gray area. There's a category where it's too hard to tell if a receiver has caught the ball, and this should change. There should be some specific rules in place that can determine whether or not a pass falls incomplete. As of now, there is a specific rule in the NFL rulebook that says what is and what is not a catch. It is Rule 8, Section 1, Article 3, which states that, and I quote, "A player who makes a catch may advance the ball. A forward pass is complete or intercepted if a player, who is in bounds, secures control of the ball in his hands or arms prior to the ball touching the ground, and touches the ground in bounds with both feet or with any part of his body other than his hands, and maintains control of the ball after both A and B have been fulfilled, unless he has clearly become a runner." Isn't that hard to understand? Well, here's a simple paraphrased version of that. A player catches the ball when the ball is wrapped in his hands and he holds on to it without the ball touching the ground and without stepping out of bounds before 2 steps inbounds. Shouldn't that be enough? Instead of complicating the catch rule with a very fancy, almost lawyer-esque definition, shouldn't there just be a simple sentence or two that describes the rule rather well? The longer definition is the root of this confusion among players and fans. If everyone knows what a catch is, why go any further and just briefly explain what it is? Player ejections are a similar matter. However, instead of going into great detail about when a player's conduct is too much, the rulebook just seems to skip over this concept altogether. All it says is that players can be ejected for their conduct. These players are prohibited from re-entering the game, and, I quote, "The player may be disqualified if the action is judged by the officials to be flagrant." What actions are considered flagrant? Thankfully, Ed gave us some examples of what it could be, like spitting or swinging at an opponent. I was at the Giants-Panthers game in Week 15. I could tell that Beckham and Norman were going at it all game, and the only discipline came after the game. However, last season, at a game between the Giants and the Rams linebacker Alec Ogletree punched Beckham in the face. Preston Parker was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he was ejected. Meanwhile, no punishment for Ogletree at all. Why is that? Here's a simple system for player ejections that will work. 3 personal fouls, and you're out. With that system in mind, Beckham would have been ejected. Perhaps it could even be called the Odell Beckham rule, or maybe not. I'm a Giants fan. With catches and ejections being rules that are almost impossible to understand, it is reasonable to assume that they are the root of this year's NFL controversy. The rulebook needs to be changed so that everyone can understand it, not so nobody can. If everybody understands what a catch is and why something is or is not a catch, or why a player should be ejected, there would be much less controversy about that, and more about things that are actually controversial. Topics like Johnny Manziel. Seriously, just Google Johnny Manziel and you'll see plenty of news, and most of it isn't whether or not he should be ejected. It's about more serious matters.